The conversion from a garage to a living space came with many challenges. The garage floor height needs to match the subfloor of the rest of the house. The slope of the garage floor is about 1.5 inches to 6 inches. The elevation of the garage floor is the focus of this presentation. Why are you seeing Kofi assembling a rotary hammer? Spoiler alert, and in maintaining 18 etiquette, difficult portions of projects are shown and errors and omissions highlighted. The base plate of the left wall of the garage is a ½ inch higher than the base plate of the right wall. The base plate was used as a reference point to level the floor. ½ inch is a big deal. Of course, the difference was not realized at the time. Double checking is its own reward. Before continuing, a quick interjection. A journey of home renovation and maintenance. Welcome to Maintaining 18. Kofi had some expert help with this part of the renovation. The garage walls are used as the forms. Notice the wood in the middle. The concrete should be on par with it. The flute from the concrete truck peeps into the window and fills the soon-to-be Mr. Tux. The concrete is then moved, unloaded, and leveled. Although poured from a low height and slowly, the concrete splashes the walls around 2 feet high. If it catches your legs, it can cause burns. Kofi used an oil-based moisturizer on that day, which creates a barrier between his skin and the concrete. Kofi lucked out, but the gentleman assisting was burned to the point his skin peeled. He was wearing protective boots, unlike Kofi. The concrete was poured on a hot day, and the level of wetness was increased, so there is more working time. This is one of the decisions the concrete truck operator asks Kofi to make. The truck operator will also need a place to wash parts of the truck. After the concrete is cured, the imperfections are noticeable. For one, there was a shallow spot. Kofi suspects the concrete drained into the foundation through a gap. Overall, the surface was not as smooth as it should be. That was partly because the bull float tool failed and imperfections were made. Other spots were high and therefore out of level. Although progress was made, this is not looking too good. Kofi needed to tackle these issues, starting with the high spots. At this point, Kofi rented a floor grinder. The grinder is for surface preparation and can remove 1/16 of an inch of cement per pass. Sounds very fast. Here, the grinder is used without water. The special vacuum to manage the dust was not available for rent. The shop vac was used in lieu could not work effectively for long, even with a dust bag. The filter clogged quite often. It was not long before this method was abandoned. At this point, water was used to keep the dust down. It became messy fast. The shop vac sprang into action, sucking up the murky water. A good thing happened. Since the area was wet, it provided an opportunity to power wash the walls to remove the cement splashes. Nevertheless, many gallons of water was collected and dumped. At this point, Kofi realized that the problem was far worse than he thought. After a day of grinding and not seeing the correct results, prompted an assessment. Most of the floor was higher than it should have been. The gap between the red laser light and the pencil mark shows the floor is about 3/4 of an inch too high. Having to remove that much concrete, there is only one way to do it effectively. That is to chip it out with a rotary hammer. Kofi delivered more work for himself. Such a situation is never pleasant. Be back in 30 seconds with more progress. The astute viewer has noticed there is no insulation, and there are electrical boxes in place without wiring. There are permits in place which cover these aspects of the construction. At this point in the renovation, work on the floor stopped, as it would take time to remove the concrete and then apply a lever to smooth it to perfection. Tracing back, there was preparation to install the concrete was poured, and then grinding and chiseling to correct mistakes. Construction covered by permits have been addressed, and now attention turns to the floor. The images are of the existing floor that should be as flush as possible to the new floor. A new story pole is needed. The story pole indicates when the correct depth has been reached. The proper depth is the height of the finished floor plus a 1/4 inch for the glue. This portion is a challenge. All debris removed, and a spot a 1/4 of an inch below the existing floor is found to take the measurements. It is even more challenging to determine the height of the old slab, the ideal piece of information. Kofi tried but could not determine where the floor ended and the glue started. The point of reference is noted. This is how high the subfloor should be. Kofi will have to dig below this point and later use self-leveling underlayment to complete the subfloor. A laser level is used to have a room-wide and consistent height to reference from. The laser level has to be fixed securely and not allowed to shift. For that purpose, the laser level is attached to the studs using screws. The laser level from this point is focused on one thing only: this room. Here is the story pole. It has a post leveler attached. It is placed on the reference point. The post is then made plumb and a mark made at the laser line. Why is Kofi doing this? Well, the unfinished wall you are seeing is 1/2 inch lower than the opposite wall. A reliable point of reference is needed, and that will be the story pole and the laser level. The story pole is completed by adding a scale that will help determine how much material has to be removed. The mark is also made pronounced and easy to read labeling added.
Alright, the story pole is ready.
Time to put the story pole to use and mark the offending areas, starting from the sunken area referenced earlier. A cut is made into the concrete about the depth that needs to be removed. When using the flat chisel bit, this makes it easier to get started. The cut also contains the breaks in the concrete to a defined area. The breaks are caused by chiseling, and that is the goal of chipping. Take a look at Kofi chipping and enjoy. Looking good. Using the wide chisel bit is slower than using a narrow chisel bit. Want to see the difference? Here is what the smaller chisel bit does. There is something to say about grinding. The dark spots in the floor is the aggregate. Once the aggregate is reached, the speed at which the grinder function drastically drops. At this point, you can grind for hours and barely etch 1/8 of an inch. Grinding is for surface preparation, a smooth surface, not for removing excess concrete. As an analogy, in woodworking, sanding is done to prepare the wood for finishing. The results of the wide chisel bit. That is it for this episode of Maintaining 18. Any day maintenance is performed, blight takes a beating, and the maintainer victorious. The day is won. Kofi is off to remove this rubble, and you should be off to subscribe and tell your friends.